When we think back to classic automotive rivalries, we really think Honda and Toyota, not necessarily Honda and Volkswagen. But we did drive the 2018 Toyota Camry and 2018 Kia Optima earlier this year, and after driving both of these cars for a week, we do feel that these two compete very well against each other, not so much against the Camry or the Optima. Our showdown today is on the 2018 Honda Accord 1.5-liter Touring and the 2018 Volkswagen Passat Highline. We're going to be showing you everything about these two cars, what features they have that are the same, what makes them different, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for a sub $40,000 midsize family sedan. Now, the reason why I think these two are more comparable than the other showdown we did is because really when you look at the feature set, they do offer similar features, even though they are sort of the same price as the other midsize family sedan showdown that we did. Up front, both cars have LED headlights, but they're both fixed. They're not adaptive, so they're not going to be moving as you're turning your wheels. Both cars have forward collision sensors. The Volkswagen's one is built into the badge on the front, whereas the Honda sensing one is at the bottom. We do find that the Honda's gets a little dirtier and filled up with snow just because it is a concave design and more recessed into the bumper. Both of them do have front parking sensors, but the Volkswagen's takes it just a little step further by adding them onto the side, which allows it to have a park assist feature. It's not going to automatically park the car for you, but it'll tell you if you'll fit into a spot. Now, the Honda does have LED fog lights at the bottom because the Volkswagen has the R-Line package. It takes away that to make it a little bit more sporty. Also, the Honda only has manual folding side mirrors, whereas the Volkswagens are power folding. Both cars have proximity keys that allow you to open the car from the front doors or lock them, and both cars have remote starters, but the Volkswagens, for some reason, they've designed it when you unlock the car, the remote starter turns off. Out back, things are also a little different as well. Again, those parking sensors are found on both vehicles. However, again, the Volkswagens are on the side as well to help with the park assist feature. Both cars have trunks that open up, but the difference is the Volkswagens will pop up all the way for you. The Honda, on the other hand, not so much. We found the trunk size to be good on both vehicles. Now, the backup cameras on each are a little different. There is no 360-degree camera system offered on either vehicle, so again, that's why we think that these two are a little bit more comparable. The Volkswagen's is fixed just underneath the lip here, but we find the Honda's has just a little bit more control. You do have multiple options to be able to see either a wide angle, a narrow angle, or sort of a top down. It'll move the camera in a way that you can see the top down on that. So it does help a little bit more if you're pulling into a spot, maybe backing up to a wall and you don't want to hit it. You want to see just how close you are to it. Now, the main difference with the Volkswagen is it is a much older platform. It was actually released in 2011 as a branch off of the global Passat platform. So the interior is very conservative in comparison to the Honda. First off, you only have two front heated seats and heated rear seats. There is no ventilated seats. Also, for a $40,000 car, there is no heated steering wheel. Another feature they've removed that is available on the Accord, there's no home link. So if you are looking for home link, you're out of luck for the 2018 model. Aside from that, the interior, as I said, is very conservative. You do have automatic headlights and power front seats. You do have memory. There's one extra memory option for the Passat, so you can have 3 people. But overall, I think the media is the weakest link in this vehicle. It just feels much more dated. Even though you do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it is a smaller screen and just provides a little less functionality than we found on the Honda. And again, throughout the rest of the car, it is very similar to some of Volkswagen's older products. The engine start-stop is down here. You do have some blank buttons, cup holders, and at least a manual handbrake, which is something that you really don't find anymore, as well as a CD player, something else you don't find too often in these cars. Sunroof up top, you can open as much or as little as you want. And really, the rest of the interior is pretty straightforward. The seats are comfortable enough, a little bit more firm than we find in the Accord, but they are supportive. And really, the big plus of this vehicle, the back seat is much larger than in the Accord. You have much more legroom for rear passengers there, and just little tiny things like map lights help if you have passengers back there who are maybe, reading a newspaper, playing a game, something like that. They need light at night. So just tiny things like that kind of enhance the experience inside this car. And if you like the more conservative approach, then you're going to like this. Now, the Honda's interior is much more modern. You have a wood design along here. Near field communication, I don't know why car makers are putting it on, but it's easy to sync your phone if you have anything but an Apple phone to be able to get into it. And the navigation screen is certainly much bigger, but I do find that it is just angled a little too high. You know, most of the manufacturers now are putting it on the top like it is found here, but I just find the angle, if they just maybe tilted it a little bit further down, it'd be at a good position. You do have front heated seats and rear heated seats, heated steering wheel, and ventilation. Also home link like we mentioned. You have a heads-up display, which is also not maybe the best that we've seen in the market, but it is very good. It allows you to see things like your navigation, your speed, your tachometer, and also the speed limit for where you are. You also have Qi wireless charging built in here, and the fact that you can hide it is great. So if you do have a phone that needs to be charged, maybe you park it somewhere and you're on a trip, you can hide it so people don't see it and break in. The gauge cluster also has tons more information than you can get on the Volkswagen. It's much more high detailed, and you can see things like your tachometer, your trip, fuel economy, navigation, music, and a whole bunch of data there. It's actually quite nice and an enjoyable experience overall. There's only 2 driver memory settings, but we do find since they light up, it makes it a little bit easier. If you do have multiple drivers, you can assign it to the key, as the key says driver 1 or driver 2 on the back of it. And it's good too if you're, maybe have somebody else driving, you push the seat back a little bit and you think, oh, is this where I normally sit? No, because the light's on all the time. And with both vehicles, there aren't any LED interior lighting, which is kind of a strange thing to find on this vehicle, especially with the Accord. Since it is brand new, you'd think that they maybe be putting the LED lights in there. As for the back seats, they still are comfortable. You still do have room back there, but it is just a little bit smaller than we found on the Passat. Also, the armrest, when you fold it down, just kind of flops. Doesn't actually stay in position, but at least unlike the Camry that we featured earlier, it's already lower to the ground, so it sits on the seat much better than it did on the Camry. But the Passats, you're a little bit higher up, probably a little bit more comfortable. The last thing that I'm going to nitpick about is just the gear shifter. You do sit lower in the Accord with a higher center console here. So the problem is when you are in drive, I find that this is really in the way. Whereas when you're using the Passat, everything's a little bit lower down. You can get to the controls just a little bit easier. But for the most part, they are very, very similar. I know that the designs are different, but the core features are pretty much shared between the two of them. But now it's important for us to go and take a look what these cars can do on the road. And we're going to start with this Accord. This is the 10th generation Honda Accord, and it is all new for 2018. So it is, I know some people might say it's a little unfair comparing it to the Passat, because the Passat probably really is at the end of its life cycle for its current generation. It came out in 2011. So it really is time for it to retire and be replaced by something else. But we do think that there are a lot of features between the two that are similar, and I think a lot of people are going to be cross-shopping them. We actually posted about this on Reddit, and we had a user who said that they were really big fanboy of Volkswagen, and they were really considering the Passat, but they took a look at it and it wasn't for them, and they ended up with the Accord. So we're quite happy to hear that somebody actually compared the two and made a decision based on their own personal experience with it. So that's why we're happy to have this test drive here today. And, the first thing that we notice when we're getting into the Accord is it really is comfortable. You sit a little bit lower down, a little bit more sporty, and it really just does have a good drive to it. It's not as smooth as the Passat. The Passat really glides over and eats up the bumps, so you do feel it a little bit more in this car, but I have to say that the seats are really comfortable in this. The driving position is very good, and the handling is quite good too. The steering's stiff, the suspension is pretty good too. It wobbles a little bit when we do funny maneuvers like that, but for the most part, it really does have a good ride to it. Now, the engine is sort of the biggest difference between these two. This is a 1.5 liter turbo over the Passat's 2.0 liter. But I have to say that this feels like it has much more power. We've been in the econ mode throughout our entire week with this, and there hasn't been one time that I've needed to put it into sport mode. For example, right now, this is full throttle. It picks up pretty quick. I'm already up to getting a speed ticket. Whereas with the Passat, it's a little bit slower. The car's multi-information display in the cluster is quite high detailed. You have tons of options for different things that you can display. One of them is the tachometer. So when you're in the econ mode, it's just the tach. You've got your speed on the right, and the little lights are green to tell you that you're doing your part for the environment. But when you put the car into sport mode, you can feel that CVT kick in, and even though they're not real gears that you can use with the flappy paddles, and there is no Tiptronic mode here with the shifter, you do notice that you have a little bit more power, and that tachometer changes to show your boost gauge as well as the tach. And when you hammer it down, I feel like it's got a little bit better throttle. The response is quite a bit better in this when you're in sport mode. So if you really do need it for some reason, I don't know why you would, you can certainly put the car into sport mode and have a little bit more fun with it. And you can take a corner nice and tight, hammer in that throttle, and just like that, we're pretty much already up to the speed limit. And like that, I don't feel like you need any more power. I don't even know why you really need to consider the 2-liter, aside from getting a traditional automatic transmission with it. That's the one big difference aside from the engine, is the Passat uses a regular 6-speed automatic, whereas this uses a CVT. And I know that's going to put off a lot of people who are considering this car because, you know, CVTs really aren't as fun. Most of the enthusiasts really don't like them. But I have to say that it almost doesn't feel like it. I've really enjoyed the drive of this car over the past week, and I've really wanted to be able to drive it more, but we really do have to split our time between these two cars. So I've tried my best to put as much time behind the Passat as I do behind the Accord here. But I just find that the engine is a little bit nicer, sounds better too. It doesn't sound as raspy, even though it's smaller. I find that the engine has a nice note to it, doesn't sound like it's overworked, and really gets you onto the highway when you need it to. Now, we spent the first half of our week with the Accord and then the second part of our week with the Passat. And really, there's a lot of difference between these two. This uses a 2-liter turbocharged engine over the Honda's 1.5-liter. But I do find that the Honda just has a little bit more pep than this. You know, if we go full throttle, picks up, makes a lot of noise. That's the one thing you notice too. The engine noise is significantly louder, I'd say, in this. And overall, just doesn't feel like it really has as much power. You can put it into sport mode, and it certainly helps. We're flooring it right now, and it makes a sound, and it'll get up to speed. But you know, we just found on the highway doing the same driving on the same roads, it just was a little bit more difficult for this car to get up to speed. And it's probably because it is also bigger. There's probably a little bit more weight to it just with the amount of paneling that has to go into it, because it is a slightly longer car. That's one of the reasons why. So we find it's a little underpowered, but you can go into sport mode. You do have the paddle shifters up top, so if you want to put it into paddle mode and shift it yourself, you certainly can, and it does make a bit of a difference. So we find that with this, if you do need to go on the highway, if you do need to pass people, you'll probably want to use sport mode, whereas with the Accord, we never used it. It's actually been in econ mode the entire time. Now, one of the major things we find as well with the ride of this vehicle is just how soft it is in comparison. You go over the bumps and you really don't feel it. It's quite comfortable, and overall the suspension is pretty good. If you do some weird maneuvers like I'm doing right now, it really does stay where you're driving it. It doesn't understeer or oversteer on these little weird things that I'm doing, and you can go around the corners relatively quick, and it'll keep the line that you're driving. So I have to say that overall the suspension is nice. It's got a firm steer to it, but the suspension itself is soft enough that when you go into bigger bumps, it kind of glides over. It has a little bit of a pillowy feel to it, similar to a lot of the luxury cars that we drive, especially the full-size luxury cars. It has more of a feel to that, and I have to say the size of it kind of makes it feel more like a full-size car than a mid-size, just because there is a lot of length to the back of this vehicle. So you do feel that it is a little bit heavier, perhaps, than some of the other vehicles. But overall, I'm really impressed with the ride of it. It's certainly a lot more comfortable than the Accord. But in terms of seating, you sit higher up in this car. I feel a little bit higher up. My head, if I sit straight like a normal person, pretty much I'm touching the roof here, the headliner of the vehicle. I can't go down any further, and I also haven't found the perfect seating position. Usually I'm able to customize the seats in a way that I'm pretty comfortable sitting upright, but in this one I just I feel I'm either too far back or too hunched forward. Haven't found the perfect position, and the seats are a little firm, but overall they're not too bad. You are comfortable on longer trips, and if you are using this as a family sedan, which is really what this segment is, and you've got a kid or two in the back, or even other adults, they'll be comfortable too, just because there is more legroom in this car. I do find that the interior space just makes a little bit more sense, especially with the center console here. It's lower to the ground. There's not really any buttons there except for the start-stop button, so you don't really have to worry about what's going on down there. But the screen is also, it's probably angled at the same position, a little bit higher up, but since it's lower down in the center console here, it just works a little nicer. You can see it without having to kind of glance up and over to get to it. We're going to go from a dig in sport mode. Oh! A little torque steer too. We kind of pull to the left a little bit, but it does eventually get up to speed. Engine is louder. I'd say probably the cabin though, it's hard to really say. I'd say they're probably similar in terms of the quietness to it. I mean, you do certainly hear some of the road. We are on winter tires still, and I'm looking forward to getting rid of those. But overall, the ride's comfortable enough, and sound insulation is pretty decent on this car. Compared to our current midsize family sedan benchmark, the 2018 Kia Optima SXL Turbo we featured earlier, both cars are missing a few features, such as the 360-degree cameras, rear window sunshades, and panoramic sunroofs. But there's still a lot going on for the Accord and Passat that will bring their loyal customers back. The Accord certainly has more tech, with ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, HomeLink, a nicer infotainment system, and a remote starter that actually works. The Volkswagen's power folding mirrors might not be a big feature, and the parking assist might be more useful to some and never used by others. The Passat was slightly more efficient with its larger, less powerful engine, coming in around 8.1 liters per 100 kilometers, whereas the Accord was at 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers. And there's no denying that the ride quality of the Volkswagen was significantly softer and more in line with luxury cars. Rear seat space in the Passat is also better, giving rear passengers more legroom despite the car's smaller exterior dimensions overall. If it really came down to picking between these two midsize family sedans as my next new purchase, the answer is clear for me. And that's the Honda Accord. No doubt about it. I've owned a Honda Accord before, and really, it does have a very similar feel to that 90s era Honda Accord. When you jump up almost 30 years, I really do feel like I'm driving just a nicer version of that 90s Accord. And I love that car so much, but I have to say, just based on everything, price, performance, feel, comfort, everything, there's so much going on in this car to make you think, wow, 35 grand roughly, you get a lot of car for that price. It's just the styling, I think, is going to be what might not be appealing to everybody. The inside, I think, is quite elegant. The screen might be a little high angled, but I think the exterior design is really what's going to put the most people off when they're considering a car like this. But I have to say that I'm really impressed with it, and this would be the car that I would pick for multiple reasons. $4,000 cheaper, you get more features. I think that maybe the exterior styling isn't as nice as the Passat, but the inside is quite comfortable, and the tech is just unbeatable at this price point. Thanks for watching this episode of Test Drive Showdown on the 2018 Volkswagen Passat Highline and the 2018 Honda Accord 1.5-liter Touring. For more information about either car, please click the Spotlight episode links at the end of the video to see our full tour and review for each car. Which of these midsize sedans would you pick, and why? Leave a comment below and let us know what you think. And don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and consider sharing it on social media sites like Facebook and Reddit. We invite you to subscribe to our growing channel so that we can continue to provide content to you on a regular basis. Until next time, take care.